to continue. We started last Saturday and Sunday with our book club, this beautiful book. And if you have not attended last weekend, that is fine too. I will give a little bit of overview. And let me just share my screen and we can start. Masters, can you all see?
Yes, Vinya ma'am.
So, like I said, Budda's Wife, written by Janet Surrey and Samuel Shem, they both are a couple, and they actually they have co-authored this book. And Janet is a clinical psychologist, and she and Samuel bring a lot of their own personal experience, not just from all the clinical work they went through and experienced through others, but their own relationship where they had separation and they came back together, and with more spiritual understanding, they have come back and they continue their journey in this life. So they have taken Buddha's teachings into their own life, and they have followed Buddha's path too. So there is a lot of their own experiences interwoven into this story. So let's see what they have. And again, all of us, I request not just to sit and hear, which is again a mechanical, I repeat that, let's listen. Listening is more active, where you are, the meditation got is all clear and calm, right? And now with your heart, and be empathetic, put yourself into that character, completely understanding, leave all your presumptions, assumptions, your judgment away, and let's just see what the story is of, has for us, and what the authors have to say to us. So last weekend, I had told you the story. First, I introduced you to the authors, and then after that, the next day, I actually told you about the story. Most of us know about how Buddha had, Buddha who was Siddhartha, young Prince Siddhartha, how he had gone on a Swayamvar, which is like a festival where when a princess is ready of the age to be married, the king usually announces something called Swayamvar, where the eligible prince from surrounding kingdoms come, and then they show their bravery, their skills and talent, and then they win over the best suitor gets the hand of the princess. And Siddhartha proves to be not only be the best, but Yashodhara falls in love because they both know each other. They've grown up together. And when he relates the story of how he had saved a swan when his cousin Devadatta, he was practicing bow and arrow skills, and when he shot down the swan, Siddhartha actually saved the swan. And then he beautifully explains that shows his nature, how he had seen himself in the swan and the swan in him. So he felt for it, and he said, the one who saves is the one who gets the swan. Unlike what Devadatta was saying, he says, I shot it, so it's mine, and I want to show it to the king and get praise from him. But Siddhartha is very strong about what he feels, and he saves the bird. And this is what Yashodhara saw, that he was courageous. And though he was a prince, he went out of the norm of, all the princes, they usually do what they hunt and they kill. But he stood up for what he really believed in. So she fell in love and they got married. And then Siddhartha, like I had explained, his dad had, King Suddhodana, had protected him inside the kingdom. He built walls because there was a predicament given by the gurus that he will grow up to be a great king, or he'll become a great spiritual leader. So king wanted an heir, so he didn't want him to be seeing any suffering. The king knew once he sees suffering, he would start thinking about going and helping, and he would start that would trigger his spiritual path. So the king built a wall and gave everything that the young prince needed. All his education was there, his friends, and all the luxury that he wanted. And yet Siddhartha was always finding something not the other bothering him. He was seeing the greed in the people. They had everything they needed, but he could see that they were not happy. And his heart always wanted to go see what was going on. So the charioteer and friend that he had, Channa, who he always was with him, every time they grew up also together. So he was more like a friend. So he asked him to take him out, and then he actually comes across, first time he sees suffering. He had never seen someone sick, ill person. And he just is so surprised, will I be sick too? And then when he sees an old person completely, bent down and looking very weak, and he thinks he's a prince, so he might, because the king has moved all these people out of the kingdom and provided a separate city for them. So Siddhartha has never seen an old person or a sick person. So he sees and he keeps wondering, will I become like that? Even though I'm a prince, I have all these things, will I also? And Channa explains to him, this is the truth of the life, everyone who is born will become old one day. And then he also sees a dead body, and he has never experienced that too. So Channa explains to him that death is inevitable. Everybody dies, anyone who's born, whether you're a prince or whether you're a pauper, you will die. So this disturbs Siddhartha a lot. And then he also comes across a monk who's sitting with hardly any possession. He only has a light robe on him, and he sees him being in total bliss, happiness. And when he questions him, how come you have I don't see that you don't have anything with you. How come you look so relaxed and in so much of bliss? And the monk actually tells him, in order to be happy, we don't need all these worldly possessions. You need to connect with yourself, and you understand that we are born here, we are naturally happy within. And Siddhartha, that is the triggering point from there, his mind is restless. And Yashodhara starts noticing that, she sees that he is restless because they both share a beautiful relationship. They share a spiritual quest together. And he relates to her that all this has been bothering, and he wants to go, but King Suddhodana doesn't let him go. He wants to go out and seek answers for all this, but King Suddhodana says, no, you are the heir. You have to take over after me, this kingdom. So, and Siddhartha, though king protected him so much from seeing the suffering, he actually, in his own life, after he marries Yashodhara, they don't have children for 13 years. So that is somewhat, King Suddhodana couldn't stop him from going through that kind of difficulty. But Yashodhara and Siddhartha, they share a beautiful relationship. She even mentions about how they come across this beautiful mantra called your mind creates the abyss, which is like a deep pit, bottomless pit, but the heart helps you cross it. And and they both cross this pit that, that they see when they don't have children. They both have such loving relationship. Their love actually takes them over across. And after 13 years, she's expecting a baby. And this whole thing is happening when she's about to have her baby. So Siddhartha doesn't want to leave her because, she's his wife, she's going to have a baby. So he's confused. His heart wants him to go out and find all the answers. And Yashodhara sees this, but then Siddhartha one day decides that he has to go. He can't just stay. He feels imprisoned. So he calls Channa, and Channa takes him outside the kingdom. And then he tells Channa, you take this message. I couldn't tell them. So he just leaves Yashodhara the day, their young baby Rahula is born. He leaves her early in the morning in the bed, and he just, without telling her, he leaves because he doesn't know how to tell. He just leaves. He tells Chenna, take this necklace and this lock of hair, give it to Yashodhara, and tell her, I have to go and find answers for liberation from all sufferings, and I have to do this by myself. And he sends his sword as a message for his King Suddhodana too. He tells Chenna to go and give. So we saw in the last weekend that Chenna comes with this shocking news. He too doesn't know how to relate this to Yashodhara, because they both were in so much of love, and he knew it would break her totally. So before he comes back, Yashodhara is sitting in her bed, and she sees that, the king, she sees that Siddhartha is not there, that he left. And in her mind, her mind keeps playing games with her. She keeps thinking, did he really go? Because she had seen that all these days he's been disturbed. But then she convinces herself, saying, how could he have gone? Like, he loves me so much. We have a baby and that kind of thing. So let's move on from there. But all this thinking of hers suddenly comes to reality when Chenna comes and brings this shocking news. So when Chenna comes and tells her that, Siddhartha has left and he sent these, the necklace and the hair, that's when all the thought process that she was going through, how could he have left and all, it comes to a stop, and the blood, drains from her face. This is what happens to people when sudden shock. We can see, if we notice, observe them, our body actually gives a lot of signs, and you can notice. So this is what happened to her. Suddenly the blood drained from her face. And she has this beautiful baby, right? She just had, and she looks down at the baby. And the mind, again, is disconnected. It's not functioning properly. She's not completely into reality or into the news. She's still trying to find answers. The mind actually is trying to find answers. She looks at the baby, and then they named the baby Rahula, and her mind is questioning her. Has this baby caused, Siddhartha to go? Because now he has an heir, right? The baby is born, so now maybe he doesn't have to feel guilty for leaving. And also she thinks, we named him Rahula. Rahula means fetter. Fetter is like chains, right? So she said, is that why Siddhartha named him Rahula? Like, is he being, he felt like the child was, might be a fetter for him? And these kind of thoughts are spiraling in our head again and again, and trying to, if all of us, if we have observed, our mind is very comfortable in a known place. It does not like unknown uncertainties. So it tries to find answer and tries to keep looking for some kind of reason. Even though the reality is in her face. Chenna is telling her that Siddhartha has left. So finally it hits her, she says, he's gone. And the shock made her feel that everything she knew had broken apart. She just felt like the earth beneath her feet, just was pulled away, and she was falling somewhere deep into the bottomless pit. Then she felt everything was not real, unreal. All that she had known, they were beautiful young couple who fell in love, and they had everything that they wanted. And suddenly now she felt like, the door shut on her, and all that she knew was behind that door. Like, it was shut, and she would never see that again. And this is what the shock she is going through. So let us just see how, step by step, how this is building in her. So if you've looked at Yashodhara's story, for that matter, even Siddhartha, when he was young, they're prince and princesses. They've grown up with everything, or even more than what they wanted. They've been given. And I know they're prince and princesses, but if you see, even our kids, we also bring them up with more than what they need. And we try to protect them from everything. And King Suddhodana actually did the same thing with Siddhartha, protected him from all the suffering. He tried to give him everything he knew. But life, as it took its own turn, and Siddhartha, he saw, and he couldn't stop anymore. He needed to find. But now look at Yashodhara. She had never seen any like a failure. Till now, everything was going actually not just good, but sky high. Like she was in cloud 9. She married someone she loved. She had everything she wanted. They had even the baby that, they dreamt for 13 years. She had that. And they were making wonderful plans for the future together. And suddenly this happens, and she's not ready to accept, or her mind is not ready to take the answer. So when Chenna brings this news of Siddhartha leaving, it was the shock. And she just, right from where she was in that cloud 9, or the highs that she falls down, all the way down, deep down, rock bottom. And this is how a shock feels, when someone is in that, a panic attack comes to them. She couldn't breathe. She felt like she just, her face was getting pale. And then with the loud scream, that's what she does. She screams out so loud that the whole palace rings with that cry of her scream. The author beautifully explains, like, when she screams, not just the people in the palace, but even the animals hear it. And usually, if you notice, animals are the first ones that sense any kind of, all these feelings, the emotions. I have a dog, and I know when we went to India or any other place, we board him and come back. He's so anxious, and I can see that, they're very sensitive animals. Or whenever I am not, I'm not happy, or something is going on, he knows something is going on, comes and sits next to me. So animals actually in the palace, there's this elephant that Siddhartha had gifted when they got married. And then there's peacocks, and all of these animals are crying. They hear her cry, and they are restless. And people notice that. The dogs and all the maids in the palace come rushing to her chamber to see what happened, because she was crying out so loud. When they come in, they see that she's sitting on the floor. And, when we are in pain, that's what we do, right? You hug yourself, and that's how she's sitting. Her arms clasped around her, and her body is rocking, and she's crying loudly. And then the newborn baby next to her is also completely, babies are very in tune with their mothers. And if the mother is not feeling well, the baby knows something is wrong. So the baby too, she was not giving any attention to the baby too. So the baby was crying. And when the maids came in and they tried to console her, they couldn't, because she was not in any state of listening. She just was crying, and they did not know what to do. So then they decided, let's go and call the queen, Pajapati, because she was more experienced maybe, and she's the queen, so let's call. And if you remember, Pajapati is King Suddhodana's wife. He had two wives. She's the second wife, and she actually is the sister of Queen Maya, who's Siddhartha's biological mother. She dies after giving birth to Siddhartha, and then Pajapati, she is his stepmother. She takes the responsibility. So Pajapati, they also call her Prajapati, so you will hear both the names. In the book, it says Pajapati, so I'm saying Pajapati. She steps in, so she comes here. She's very composed and very experienced person. So when she comes here, she enters. The author very beautifully describes how when she comes, she sees that Yashodhara is huddled on the floor, and the body language is what actually, speaks out loud. She sees Yashodhara sitting and crying, and she could see that Yashodhara's eyes were desperately racing and looking for someone in the room to connect and, to find some answers. And this happens to a person who's in shock, and if you notice the mind, there is no connection. So the mind and the body connection is, mind loses the reasoning power. And her eyes were wandering everywhere. As soon as she saw Pajapati, finally she saw someone she just could connect to, and she immediately screams to Pajapati, he's gone, your son is gone. So she's trying to tell him, like, your son has left. And Pajapati, as soon as she saw the eyes of Yashodhara, and she saw the terror in her eyes, she didn't know what had happened, but she could sense something was completely not right, and it hits her in her stomach. There's like in her belly, she could feel it. And the author beautifully describes this, because as a mother, she's a mother too, right? And Siddhartha is her son. So usually mother connects to a baby because she's she has the baby in her stomach for 9 months. That's where she felt the pain. The connection was there, right, at the belly button. And so he explains. But Pajapati, she also felt that her body shook a little bit, and she also felt the shock. But immediately she caught herself, and she understood from her past losses and suffering that her focus now had to be Yashodhara. So she is the wise one, and she has gone through this before. Like I said, she remembered the time when her sister, Maya Devi, she was a queen, she gave birth to Siddhartha, and she died in 2-3 days after she gives birth to Siddhartha. So that was the time. She was very dear to her sister, and she was torn between life and death at that time. And she too was very young. She had just gotten married. She was a young person herself, but she had to face the death of her loved sister, and there was this a young baby, Siddhartha, and she had to choose between death and life, and she very wisely chose the life, and she took care of the child as her own. So she stepped into the role of mother at that time and made that decision. So all this, seeing Yashodhara like this brought back all those memories to her when she had to face a sorrow. And she knew that Yashodhara till now had never experienced any sorrow, or any kind of trouble, forget sorrow. And until a person experiences some failure, they're not prepared to, handle grief. So this was the first time Yashodhara actually was experiencing some grief, and she had no way of understanding what this is, and she felt like this is the end for everything. She felt she was like she was the only one going through this, and that kind of thing. So Yashodhara Pajapati could connect with Yashodhara. She understood this because she had never lost, she knew that Yashodhara had never lost anything that she held so close to her heart. And again, like when she rose up to be the stepmother for Siddhartha, she beautifully rises up again to be mother for Yashodhara, not just as a mother-in-law or anything. She saw more than that. She saw the common suffering, that when she too went through the similar situation, she knew what one goes through, and she steps in as a mother to Yashodhara. She had a moment of clarity at that time. The author mentions that Pajapati, as she's going through this, she has this moment. And look at this, it beautifully says the clarity that she has is what has been is. So whatever has happened, it's the past. And what is will be. So whatever is happening right now, whatever is will be, whatever will happen in future will happen. But what matters is now. So the power is in now, just like the power of now. We understand that, everything that happens in the moment. So to be present is what is the most important thing. And this is a message for all of us. When we are in a shock or in pain, our mind usually takes us either to the past, thinking how good it was before, or to the future, which we are not sure. And it keeps bringing up all bleak pictures of, future and everything. And we forget the reality, which is now. We forget what is going on around us. In this case, Yashodhara has a baby in front of her, but she's not even looking at the baby. She can't see the baby. And neither can she see herself too. So this is what is, she's blinded completely by her grief, and she's either thrown between past and future, and that's what she is going back and forth. Her mind is going through all that. And Prajapati knows this is what is happening to her, and that it is more important to bring her back to the present. That's what she gives the message, and that is what she's trying to do, to bring Yashodhara to the current moment. She said, so she gives this beautiful message here. She says, he has left, he meaning Siddhartha. Siddhartha has left to find his way through suffering. So he saw suffering, and that his heart was calling to find answers for that. And he has left, and that's his choice. That's what he did. But you have your child here. So she's trying to bring her again to the current moment, showing her, your child is here with you. He needs you. This is your first taste of suffering. You need to find, and just like how she herself had, Prajapati had her taste of suffering when her sister had passed away, and she found her way through, and Siddhartha found his way by going out. She says, you need to find your way through this suffering, a path of one who stays and endures. So she's trying to show her, there is a path. You need to stay, and you can find your answers. You have this baby right now, connect with him, and you need to figure out a way out of this. And she's trying to say all this, but Yashodhara is still in grief. She's still, all this is not sinking into her. But Prajapati never gives up. She's always trying to show her hope and bring her into present, always giving her positive, the positive thoughts, and connecting her with the world around her, not in the past or future. So Yashodhara thought, this is when Prajapati sits next to her, Yashodhara, actually in the book it's described how Prajapati, more than words, what she does is she walks to Yashodhara, she puts her arms around her, and then she sits there with her. She lets her put her head on her shoulder and cry. And without a word, she lets her, sit there, and they both spend a quiet moment. For sometimes she tells the maids to, leave, and then they spend. Only after that, when they connect like that, then she gives this advice to Yashodhara. And if you see, a hug is such a beautiful thing that many of us don't realize. This reminds me of my personal experience. That I was translating once. GK sir had written a beautiful article, and I was translating it. In that, he mentioned, if you notice, when we give hug, what part of our body actually touches each other? It's not, yes, we are there, but it's not like we put our heads together or any other part. It's basically, hug is for a heart to heart. It's the hearts that connect, and they communicate. So that is what a hug does. And we take it for granted that hugs are not necessary, maybe. And I myself, I'm very, I never give hugs much. And my children, since they grew up here, they are the ones who, they always hug, and through them I'm learning. And I think it is the best way of expressing without words, to tell someone that I'm there for you, I love you, and let the heart to heart communicate. So I think we should all, and if you remember this beautiful movie, Munna Bhai, he says, Jadoo ki jhappe, and I think we all need to give each other. I can virtually give you a hug here. So we all need to give someone in, especially like Yashodhara, she was not even in her senses. And this is what calmed her a little bit when Prajapati comes. So at that moment, when Prajapati sits and consoles her like this with the body language, Yashodhara actually felt Siddhartha's presence, and she understood why he went, for his answer. She knew he had tasted this suffering, and he went for that answer. And for a moment, she had that feeling. But again, her mind takes over, and actually more than that, her grief takes over. So let's continue. So this is an attempt that Pajapati is making to empathize with her, but it still takes a while because Yashodhara is in complete shock. She's not accepting, she's in denial. So I want to take a moment here to do some reflection so far what we went through. And this book has given this reflection so beautifully. I think all of us have experienced this, but when you listen to it, we will understand how it works. They say suffering and compassion co-arise. So when we see this, right, when Pajapati came to Yashodhara in her desperation, and we see that she was suffering, and that's what arose this compassion in Pajapati. It wasn't there before. It was just at that moment that it rose. So they say that it is the suffering that made this compassion arise, and it happens to all of us. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? So Pajapati was not like a teacher until then for her. Like, she was her mother-in-law, but this is when that right moment happened. And when she saw her suffering and she saw that it brought back her own experience and she could connect with her, and the compassion naturally arose within Pajapati. So I think this is explained very well in this book. Pajapati's love and compassion brought out the wisdom on seeing Yashodhara's suffering. So most of us think, are we ready to help somebody? So it is not a question. We don't need to think. And when with suffering happens, compassion automatically co-arises. If you see when this war that's going on, right? People, there is sympathy that automatically, or empathy also. People try to do whatever they can, and they understand, they send whatever they can, they step up at that moment. At the same time, pandemic, when it happened, all of us were trying to connect to each other and help out. Actually, this soul family that I am here with, most of you, we connected during pandemic too, and we were trying to be there for each other, helping us out. Some of us had their loved ones go through some, they had COVID, some even must have lost some loved ones somewhere. But we were there for each other, and we made that journey together. So I think this being together is very important. That's what the author is trying to bring out. And especially someone like how Pajapati stepped up, someone close. It helps when someone is there, and that compassion automatically will come. So if we are in that role sometimes for somebody who is suffering, it will help us to see the author, how he explains what Pajapati does. It is like steps for us we can follow too. So I thought it was a great message. The energy of love and compassion generates the right action for that moment. So it's not that we are doing anything. It is that energy of love and compassion, and it automatically generates the right action. That's what the author is saying. It was not there before. Like I said, she didn't have to show that before, and it never happened before. It was in that moment when she saw the suffering, and that compassion and the right action automatically, it was generated. It is an arising in the moment of the relation. This is where that relation thing comes. And the author is talking about relation, right? Being in relation. And the relation also helps this happen. Wisdom co-arising to meet suffering in the act of relating. So when we relate with somebody, like I said, Pajapati was not looking at Yashodhara as her daughter or daughter-in-law or anything. It was like a co-person who was suffering. She herself, she could relate to when she was faced with this similar situation. And there is this beautiful law or saying, which the author points out: compassion follows suffering as the cart follows the ox. In India, many of you might have seen, right? There is this ox and the cart. The cart is driven by the ox. The ox walks and the cart falls, just like a horse and cart too. So in suffering, she who comes, who offers love and hope and the truth of the path, She who has seen everything, like how Prajapati is. She came, right, with love and hope, and she has seen everything and is still smiling, opens the door to the end of suffering. So she is the one who helped Yashodhara, who helps, and we'll see in the story. Otherwise, the person who's in shock will keep suffering and they'll get caught in that loop. They need somebody, a ray of hope, like, how Prajapati shows her, bringing her into present, always talking positive, always keeping that energies, positive energies. And this they call is as the law, and that compassion follows suffering is like a law, they say. And it is been there. It is inexhaustible. It's been there from ancient times. And unless we agree to be with suffering, to be with ourselves and each other in suffering, we cannot be free of suffering. Suffering, like pain, happens to everybody, right? But some of us choose not to suffer. We understand, we take the pain, accept it, and we move on. But sometimes it's hard to accept, like how Yashodhara is doing right now. She's not accepting. And when you don't accept, that is when suffering continues and you keep suffering more and more and more. So unless we agree to be with suffering, you accept it, own it, and go through it, then it won't leave us. So that's a beautiful lesson here. And I thought we could reflect on that, and we can discuss more at the end. We can talk about this. So yes, Prajapati is trying to explain, but Yashodhara is still in her grief. This is too much for her. Like I said, she had everything going and suddenly this happened and she's not ready to accept it. So she continues to grieve. And here are a few situations that keep pushing her more into the grief. When she sees the horse, Kantaka is a horse that Siddhartha always used, and that's a horse Channa brings back after he leaves Siddhartha. So Kantaka also, when the horse comes back, like I said, animals are more sensitive, right? And he misses his master. So he does not look happy after he comes back. He doesn't eat well. He doesn't, he just slowly goes into, becomes sick, and finally he dies with grief. And if you have sometimes if you are connected with animals, you would notice this. Animals always are very faithful to their masters, and they suffer, they miss them when they're not there. So that is what happened. And when she observed the horse Kantaka, her mind starts questioning, saying, will I become like that too? Will I also miss Siddhartha? And in this grief, I'll keep suffering and I'll also die one day. So she sees, and she's going through these loops of questions, answers, grieving, and she couldn't, and when she sees somebody in the palace, she just doesn't stop telling her story over and over. Siddhartha has left, and like, we used to have such a lovely life before. How can he do this? And this is, the author explains that this is a natural process for someone who is in a shock and not accepting the reality. They do this. They just want to tell their story over and over. Actually, it is, they're not there's no connection between their mind and heart, and they're not accepting, they're not in the present. So they want to keep telling their story of how they used to be, loving couple, they loved so much, and they're living either in the past, or they will talk about, how their future might be so bleak and things like that. And seeing this, King Suddhodana, he gets really angry because he wants Yashodhara to take care of her baby, the Rahula. And now that's Siddhartha is gone, he wants at least Rahula is there, right? Rahula will be the next prince. And he's also the father-in-law. So he comes and he gets really angry with Yashodhara, and he talks to her and says, you need to come out of this. You need to accept Siddhartha is gone, and you need to be here for your child, take care of your child. Because Yashodhara has not been, she doesn't even see her son anymore. She's in her own grief. She's sits in her room all day. She doesn't see anybody. She just keeps going over and over the same story in her head. So the king tries to come and talk to her, and he uses all his authority like a king, so he gets angry with her and he says, if you don't come back and start taking care, I will have Prajapati take care of your son. So he tries to warn, but Yashodhara is still not ready to listen to him. She's still in her own shock. She gets angry at the king too, and she shuts herself more inside, and she continues to grieve. She is sitting inside the palace, not coming out at all, not eating, not taking care of the baby. The maids don't know anymore what to do because she gets angry at them. She shouts, she tells them to go away. And it is only Prajapati who tries to keep, this calmness, and she makes this attempt every day to come, and she tries to bring her to the present. And the only way she thinks she can bring her is by showing the baby. She says, she shows her the baby, and she says, this baby needs you. See, you need to live for him. You need to take care of him. You need to be there for him. And she tries to show her a positive side of the life. And Yashodhara is still in a state of shock. And all that Prajapati is saying falls on deaf ears. And this is a cycle that people have, it takes time to get out, right? And even with the help of Prajapati, it is still taking Yashodhara time, because it's a big impact for her. And she always wanted to be left alone. And this happens to many of us, right? I have faced in my life too. I have, like my brother is going through some, their partnership in business broke, and they have to go through court cases for several years. So it's not just affected him, it's affected my sister-in-law, and they're like, why me, and all those kind, and they want to be left alone. And my brother actually for a year or so, he never received any calls from any of us, and he wanted to be kept by himself. He was depressed. I didn't know what to do at that time, and that was when I reached out and got into the spiritual group, and I found many answers that helped me. I couldn't help him directly, but at least it helped me understand that all of us come here and there is a reason for everything. Whatever happens, unless we accept it, first of all, like I said, suffering happens when you don't accept the pain or whatever the situation. Unless we accept it and see what the lesson is there for us to learn, the experience we have to go through, it may, teach, and we may be there to give lesson to others, through that experience. We may gain wisdom, but I cannot just say that to him, right? But at the same time, it helped me. I was suffering with him. I was feeling so bad. And every day, my sister-in-law would call and cry all the time. And she wouldn't listen to any word, just like how Prajapati was saying, everything I was saying was falling on deaf ears. So I was just there to listen for them. I said, okay, I'm here, whatever it is, you will get through this. And I wish I had known this story even before, because this book, not story, because Prajapati is such a positive influence, and she keeps showing her ray of hope. She says, you will get out of this. You will be there, later on, you will come back and help others. And that is how she gives her hope. And she brings her all the time to the present. And I understood that that is how we all need to be. When we see someone who wants to be left alone, we still need to be connecting and saying, we are there for you. We understand. They will say, you'll never understand what we're going through. But at the same time, we can, the mind is shutting them off, but we can show them what is there out there in life. And that's what Prajapati keeps doing. And like I said, Yashodhara, everything was fine. So it is hard for her to accept this. Everything was in high spirits, great plans, and everything turned completely upside down for her. And remember that mantra I said, the mind creates the abyss, the heart crosses it. She remembers that again and again. And this time she says, he's not there with me to help me cross it. So will I ever come out of this? So this is all she's thinking and putting herself, through this suffering. she denies, she's in a denial of what is happening, including her baby, even though Prajapati keeps coming and reminding her. She completely becomes silent. She doesn't even shout anymore. She just sits in her room and doesn't want to talk to anyone. She's by herself. And she feels like, suddenly like everything she knew is been closed. The life she was expecting to happen with Siddhartha. She knows even if he comes back, he'll never be the same Siddhartha she knew, right? He's now into he may come back, but he may not be the same, and her life won't be the same. And she felt very alone. And the author is trying to give us all these feelings to tell of the person who's going through a shock and denial. This is what they go through, and this is how they feel. So we need to be empathetic and understand what they're going through. There is this gap, profound gap, the savage grief, and she feels like she's in the bottomless pit. That's what the abyss was, right? I was talking about. And her mind keeps taking her spiraling and more. So there is no light or future or anything that she can see. She's just circling with questions or anger. There are different stages, and I'll go through that later on, the stages of grief, how one goes through, and we will see how Yashodhara also shows all those stages. These are the conditions all of us have, right? Sometimes when we are, in her case, it was she had to stay present for the child. And at the same time, she was feeling she was pulled into this darkness of not knowing what held for her in future. So between these two, she was being torn. And they say these are conditions of ordinary human life and suffering. This is how many of us are faced. Many times there is something like, if you accept life and you are connected with the life, then there is everything. But if you're not accepting, and then you still want to be connected to what you know and how you think it should be, then it'll always be difficult to accept what is happening, and it'll cause more suffering. And again, I'm reminded of the saying, suffering is a choice. Pain everybody has, but suffering is a choice. So unless we accept what is happening, we will continue to have suffering in our lives. And extreme suffering is what we're talking about. Small things many of us face, right? And it doesn't have to throw us into this extreme, death. And for her, it was almost like death. When he left, for her, everything had changed. And many of us face such extreme at one time, not the other. And we need to be prepared, equip ourselves with some tools. And this book gives us beautiful examples and stages, and how one should look for how one can get out of that suffering. And they even call this suffering as a ripe moment. And if we don't handle it properly, we can get caught into that suffering, and we may even, we may go into depression and denial, and even, not take care of ourselves and fall sick. But if we use that conditions, it will actually turn us towards enlightenment. And many people we have seen, most of the stories, if you hear, it was some kind of extreme suffering like this that knocked them into, moved them into thinking, into spiritual path, into enlightenment. So luckily, I think many of us have started on this path, maybe because of something, or for me, it was the time I wanted to, connect with myself. Maybe the pandemic pushed me into it. So we are fortunate that we have all this learning, where we are learning what, about death, and that it's basically, there is no death, that it is we are not just this body, right? And then when we understand that, we know that the death is there for body, but not for the soul. And I'll talk more about it a little later. But these kind of understanding and wisdom we gain through these being on spiritual path, and through all our soul masters here. Okay, so the story part, I will, as far as the story goes, I am done. And next tomorrow, another Master Madhu will continue. But I wanted to reflect here. And like I was saying, we were talking about seeing how Yashodhara went through this. There is this stages of grief, and using her stage, I only talked about when she is in shock. She's still not out, right? And Pajapati is there to step up and help her. But in the part that I've related so far, it's mostly her shock that we are seeing. So look at this. Shock and denial is the first stage. And if you see Yashodhara's story, you've seen, right? The first time, as soon as she knows in her heart that she didn't see Siddharth next to her, and she knows that something is like, wrong, because he usually tells her and goes, but she's not accepting. She keeps saying, her mind keeps giving her different reasoning, saying, no, he loves you. You have a baby, and that kind of thing. And she's trying to question and answer, and find some kind of solution for that, instead of accepting what is. She just keeps, that is part of what the mind is doing, and she keeps going through that. We saw that she's in denial. Even when Chenna actually comes and tells her, she says, are you sure? Like, maybe you're just joking. And then she says, did you and Siddharth plan this together? She keeps asking Chenna again and again, and Chenna is always there with her, trying to help her. He's very patiently listening to her, but she keeps asking again and again. I'm sure you all both you're such a good friend of his, right? And so she keeps trying to find an answer and never sees the fact that he's left, and that is the fact. And she also blames. She keeps blaming everybody, and the next stage is anger, and she goes through anger too. She gets angry with Siddharth himself. She says, how can you do this? Like, in her mind, she's very angry with him and everybody else. And she tells everyone, she shouts at the maids, she tells everyone to go out. She even is angry with King Sudodana. So this is how a natural grief cycle processes. First, we are in shock, denial, and then we get angry at everything. We are frustrated. We don't know what to do. We are irritated. And sometimes there is embarrassment and shame, but it doesn't have to be all. But these are some stages they go through, and she went through. When her mother-in-law Pajapati steps in and approaches her with compassion and understanding, the realization and grief sets in her, and she cries unconsolably. So that is when they both sit and she's crying, right? So that is when the actual, it sinks in, and she is in depression. That is another stage that they go through. After anger, then they are overwhelmed with grief. So they have lack of energy. They don't want to do anything. They feel helpless. And in this story, we have seen Yashodhara go through that stage too. I'm sorry. And then there is also this bargaining kind of phase. And she does that, like I mentioned, she goes on asking Chenna every day, did he really leave, and what could be the reason? And she goes and tells her story to everybody, trying to find some meaning to why he left. And this bargain and dialogue and question keeps going in loops. And if you see, it's not just like a graph that goes straight down. It's a spiraling thing. And that's what happens. You keep coming out, like when Pajapati was explaining, she was almost connecting to her, but then again, she spirals back. And this is something that they go through. And we'll see further in the story how slowly Pajapati is there and points all that is good. We have to find our lovable parts, and that's what a solution is. You have to find what is present, accept what is happening, and then find something good, like, lovable. There's so much good in life, right? But we forget to see when we are in such shock. And many of us as counselors, like I have also helped counseling, we've seen that we are faced with such situations, and we can point people out to what is good in life. If you just look out in nature, there's so much beauty in nature. A flower is blooming every day, or the birds are there, but when someone is in such denial, they don't see it. So it is the role of the first responder, which is what Pajapati is, and she helps. I will continue and explain that. This grief cycle we also saw yesterday when the last time when I talked about Gautami's story. I won't go through the story again here, but she's the mother that Buddas mentioned as a mustard seed mother, and she wasn't accepting death of her young child. And since Buddha was enlightened one, she goes to him, asking him for help to bring her dead child to life. And she's in such denial. We see she goes through the same thing, shock, denial. She's not accepting. And then when Buddha actually tells her to go collect mustard seed from each house which has not seen death, which has not visited, then when they actually share the stories, the villagers share their own stories of losing someone loved, she understands that death is common, and that the impermanence of life, and that sinks into her, and that is the wisdom she gains. And once she accepts that everybody who's born has to die, and that she's not alone in this, and that it's not just happening to her, she lets go and she's able to bury her son. So we've seen this story too, and look at her Yashodhara story is not still complete, but I can use the Gautami story to show you this cycle. So after she accepts and lets go, she actually gains this wisdom. She gains this wisdom. Impermanence of life is the wisdom that she gains. And she joins Buddha, and she teaches the same wisdom to many others, many other mothers. Later on, you'll see in the story they come across, including Yashodhara also. They tell the story, but she's not in that moment to accept or listen to that story yet. But so she actually used this moment as a right moment. It is like that suffering as a right moment to get towards enlightenment. And when we say enlightenment, it is the wisdom that she gained, right? Impermanence of life. If we understand, that's what Part3 sir was saying too. Death, there's no death, there is death to the body, but if you understand who you truly are, then that is the wisdom we can gain. You are this soul that continues. And if we see energy, simple science, right? Energy never, if we learned, right, in school, energy never is gone. It just changes form from one thing to the other. So if we are made of energy, we will continue to keep being, right? Maybe not in this form, maybe in another form. So if we understand, see life in such simple terms, then fear of death is gone. And when fear of death is gone, it is the wisdom that we gain, right? And then we will be able to accept death, and we will be able to live our life instead of fearing death every day and not living the life that we have. We can actually live. So all these wisdom is what we gain when we are on the spiritual path. So anyone who gains can share also their stories, and that is what this whole book is about. Hear it, remember it, and pass it on. And that's what Gautami's story was, and that's what they were doing. And they form a circle, and that's what they do. They share each other's grief and let everyone know you're not alone. And coming up next, like I said, next tomorrow, Madhu will continue. And that's where Pajapati, she comes as a first responder. First responder is someone, if you've seen when an ambulance comes also, is the first one who is there right next. Like, even in school as a teacher, I was told, like, the first thing you have to do, whoever is next, they teach them these few things, right? The CPR, whatever you have to give, because it is important. The first 15 minutes, what you do is the critical thing to bring the patient, to stabilize the patient. After that, the doctor can take care. So there are few things you have to do. And that's what Pajapati does. She tries to bring Yashodhara to the present. Being in present is very important for someone who is in shock or pain, because like I said, mind takes us either to the past or to future, but never into the present. A simple example is like when you see like when you are maybe buying a car, like when I was buying a car, that model, let's say it is Audi or Subaru or something, you never notice it so much outside. But when you want to buy, you research, and then you go out and you see almost every other car you see is that model. Like, what happened? It was always there. You just did not notice. So it's the same way, these people, when they're in that pain, they don't notice what is in front of them, the beautiful life. Like Yashodhara did not notice the baby, even herself or her people around her, her relatives. So someone who's the first responder can help them, bring them back to present. Being in present is very important. We can connect them with nature. And again, I say, as counselors, many of us try to do this, and it's a very important lesson for us to, and you don't have to be a counselor. Someone, your loved one might go through this kind of thing. So what do we do at that time? This is what we need to do. Don't, if someone experienced death in family, what do we do? Many times we notice people come, sit, cry with them. They also get into that grief. They're also suffering with them. That really doesn't help. You need to use the body language like how Prajapati used. She came, she connected with her. She could, through her eyes, she could show the empathy, and that hug and being there, letting her vent it out, and not just being there, but making her feel, through empathy, because she could truly connect with her, and that kind of thing. And then also always showing positive, showing them hope that they'll come out. Prajapati always told Yashodhara, you will come out of this and you will one day lead others. You'll use this as a lesson to guide others. And that's what Yashodhara later on does. So show them that positiveness. And even when I was counseling, many times I see them and I feel they're such beautiful souls. They have so much going on. They're just stuck on this one thing. And I tell them, you have so much future. And you will come back and sit in this role. You will be counseling somebody else. I can see that. You just need to let go here, forgive somebody, or whatever that is happening to you. So it may look simple because we are not in there, that pain and blinded. So if any of us are put into this role as first responder, please understand, be empathetic. Don't join them in their grief and suffering and make it more for them. Instead, be empathetic, compassionate, and bring them to the present. Show them, even connecting to nature. Nature has such beautiful, everyday nature is always, there is life going on. So connect them to that. And empathy is not a static process. It is very, you need to put yourself in another person, and you need to be with that person. It's a mutual relational presence. And that's what this whole book is about. So masters, I will stop. Hope I didn't take too long. I will let y'all comment or ask questions.
Yeah, masters, please share your experience, as in how, if at all, you have gone through any of such situations, and how you have felt, or how you could overcome, or who was a part of your journey and making you more better, as Prajapati did here. See, we have already, as a part of team, we have really imbibed so much out of this knowledge and discussed through and through so many points that time was insufficient for us. And today Vidya ma'am has brought it so beautifully that every little point I could feel as if something which is so much in depth, that one can really have so many sessions on this. But it helps us, each one of us, to understand better and more practical way when we really share more and more. Yeah, Disha ma'am.
My example, one little example I wanted to give, and I will, so that it'll open up everyone's discussion. So this happened to me. Mine, I didn't have any major but whatever happens, we feel like that's the worst for us, right? A few years back, I worked as software engineer for 10 years, and then there was this layoff in the company. And when they laid me off, I had moved from one division to another, like from coding to data side, from wireline to wireless, and I was new. So when they were laying off, obviously I was one on the top list, right? I had just moved, but my mind wouldn't accept that, and I started questioning, did I not do a good job? What was wrong? Why did they lay me off? And my boys were very young then, like 4 or 5 years old. So I used to come home early. I couldn't spend as much time as other colleagues. So I thought, maybe is that why they laid me off? I couldn't dedicate as much, and there was like support calls which I couldn't do. So I started blaming and questioning. But later on, it so happened that same year my mother-in-law passed away, and I went, and that's when this impermanence of life and spending time with kids, the importance came up. So I actually thought it was a good thing. It gave me a chance. I actually picked up a job teaching after that, where I connected with the kids, stayed with them, spent summer with them. So it turned out really good. But if we keep questioning ourselves and not seeing the fact, this is what happened. I don't want to go more detail, but that was. So yeah, Disha ma'am or
Hi, Vindhya ma'am. Thank you so much for the session, and thank you all masters. I joined this session as soon as I saw the flyer that this book club is happening. I thought I am going to join that, because the thing is that I had that question since my childhood. So we read about Lord that Gautam Buddha in, I think, at very young age in our school curriculum books, right? So that in that we only read that the Siddhartha left the house and left his wife and child. So that was the burning question as a child in my mind, that it's okay, he got nirvana, he became Buddha, but as a person he did whatever he did, was that justified or not? But that was the time that no, like the child does not have the courage to ask these questions to anyone, right? So yeah, so even till date I did not get the answers, like whatever the people praise, even that questions I had for Lord Rama also. When I went through the Ramayana, I had that questions again, like he was called as a Purushottama, but he completed his duty as a husband or as a father. So that was definitely a great dilemma in my mind. So I'm definitely going to get answers through this book club. So yeah, so, and I feel that when you have these questions since childhood and you cannot discuss this till now, like a mother of a teenager, but I cannot discuss these things with anyone, that I have these questions in my mind. But this is a great platform for me to put my dilemmas and clear them.
Thank you, Disha ma'am. Thank you for being honest. And yes, many of us I was thinking, how come I've been so blindsided, not thinking about that kind. I mean, because our importance went so much towards Buddha and teachings, and maybe a thought came also, we just did not think much. But these are situations that happen in everybody's life, and so authors beautifully use the story. The story is there, but they're giving a lot more. They're showing us what grief is, how to handle, how to come out, and so I'm very thankful for everything. Thank you, Disha.
Yeah. Thank you, Vidya ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was beautiful. Very detailedly you have explained. I love the way you explained, like a storytelling for kids. That's how I felt. Thank you so much. I wanted to share a couple of things. The same way, even I used to think when I was a kid, why Siddhartha left. We used to have books and books on Gautam Buddha, but there was no story about Yashodhara. That was like, a question mark for me in my life. Okay, I thought now this is like a beautiful book. And recently, the experience I had with Part3's leaving the body, that was a shock for me, actually. When you said like you might have gone through anything, that only that one stuck me. I couldn't
good you brought it, because
digest it.
many of us both are feeling that, many of us considered him as our guru, father. And so, yes, it is important for us to understand what we are going through, accept the thing. So thank you for bringing it up.
Right. So it was a lot of mind game thing. How can he go? Because I had a lot of plans. I planned to see him in December again with family and all, and also expecting US visit. So as I talked to him last year in December, so it was completely like Yashodhara. It was doing a mind game thing. Is this real? Is this real? And I couldn't work for a few days. So it was hard. Yeah, but it was easy to come out as a meditator. We go through them, but yeah, I just wanted to share that experience. Thank you, Vindhya ma'am.
Thank you, Sureka ma'am. Umesh, sir, is that no? Sumesh, I can't tell.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Good morning to all the masters. Madam, it was a wonderful experience. And can you share the real time experience with my whatever the family and things like that, whatever I gone through? Can I share?
Sure.
Yeah, actually, I have if at all, I don't know on Prajapati role and things like that. This is the first experience I'm listening. I know, okay, whatever Buddha, right, whatever other masters expressed, actually, that much only I know. But going into the connecting the dots, actually, one sharing I wanted to make it in my family. My second sister, brother-in-law passed away in COVID. So all the family members unable to go to hometown and attend the funeral and things like that. So it was so happened, actually my sister is a principal in the college, and is also the faculty, and two children's they got, actually one is in AIMS and Niman's neurosurgeon doctor, and one engineer in outside Jindal. He is an engineer. This is the family of theirs. And suddenly, actually, all the 7 members in the family got the COVID together in a second wave. And one, my brother-in-law mother is 94 years. So all are isolated, but unfortunately, my brother-in-law has to take care of her mother. So that is the condition in the family, and he was very touched. He is very healthy, and overall in our family, he is one of the person who never ever went to the hospital, and he was taking Ayurvedic treatment. Anything comes. That is the reality of his journey of 62 years. Then actually, all the people recovered, and 94 years mother also recovered. Suddenly he got into the trouble of breathing and things like that. He went to the ICU, and being his son is a doctor, actually he used to go to the ICU and give me the video call, and I used to talk to my brother-in-law, and he went to the coma and things like that. Finally, actually, when I got connected, actually he was just crying. I'm seeing the tears in his eyes when video calls comes to me every day during COVID. Then actually, suddenly one day he passed away. So fortunately or unfortunately, we all the family got together in the only in a video call and cremations, everything we did it. So I was not having any role physically to connect with my sister. And I used to call her daily. Actually, she used to cry continuously. And I used to put her only one questions, actually. What is your present status? One questions every day. What is your presentation status? And then COVID gone, actually 4-5 months ke baad, actually I called her to Bangalore, to my home, actually come and stay with me for a few days. She came, actually took the permission from the childrens, because they are also in a different state of mind. She came and stayed with me. Every day morning before going to office, I used to 15 minutes I used to talk her, and evening half an hour. And I told her, actually what you want now presently, and why you want. This is the questions I have put it to her.
Mhm.
Then she was in between. She was expressing, saying that actually, and my brother-in-law never ever given any nominee name of my sister to any banks. All the banks actually there is no nominee to my sister, and that is the reality. Then she told up to today your brother-in-law, your brother-in-law not given any rights to me. So now I got a rights. That is what actually she was expressing. I was wondering actually why she is expressing, and then I digged into some more actually. Then her experience was actually with my brother-in-law, notwithstanding other physical and things like that. Mental experience was she is controlling her. She is every time she used to tell universe that actually I wanted to get a empowerment. I wanted to get a empowerment from my brother-in-law, relief from my brother-in-law. So I don't know. I'm not spiritually talking, but I told her this is the reality. You are all your journey actually. You are used to tell universe saying that I wanted to give a relief from brother-in-law. Now the situation comes, even though he is the strongest person of the family, he passed away, and you need to accept that first. Second one is actually you got an empowerment now. If at all you got an empowerment, what you are going to do with money, gold, whatever you have, everything. So this is a conversation every day. So she told actually, okay, I will use this for that both children are there. That is and all. I told actually everything is okay. Brother-in-law is not there to see what empowerment you got. Brother-in-law is not that. That is the reality of the life. So he went off, and this is what you got it now. If at all you wanted him also to see that you got a empowerment, he is not there. But definitely you should release this message to the universe saying that actually you got a empowerment and utilize it the way brother-in-law was doing actually. That is what the connect you need to do. Karke. So 15 days she stayed with her, and she accepted the reality of life, and she accepted that actually I would have not done actually at that time that whatever the regret was there and some gap was there, everything is released. Now she is discussing with the family, two kids actually what to do and what is the affirmation or a dreams. Brother-in-law got it actually to build a big home and things like that. She's started going towards the path of the brother-in-law. So and she's accepting now everything. That is what actually I seen her everywhere. Whenever I connected, actually she's always expressing that thank you. So you made me accepted. So this is what actually one journey what I have with my own family. Another very short I will have with one vendor family. One vendor who is I'm a civil engineer.
Because the other people with
Yes,
raised.
Umesh sir, you need to respect the other people. We let
Yes,
other.
yes, sir. Thank you. This is what, madam, actually, I asked to say. It is a very fantastic experience, actually. And when this you narrated the reality of I got connected. That is what actually I wanted to express, sir. Thank you, Ashok, sir. Thank you for giving the time.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Ramakrishna Garu, please.
So yeah, thank you for taking my time. See that death is a pain. You know, a family member's death is a pain, shock, and will make you feel totally empty. Yes, but when you analyze a death from a natural cause, someone spending time in the old age, whatever, is at a one level.
Mhm.
The second level of a death is an accidental death. You meet with an accident on the road. That is, you know, another kind of a shock to the family member. You know, it comes suddenly and they don't have a way to go.
Sure.
Okay, that is another kind of a shock. And COVID in the last 2 years is equivalent to a death by accident on the road on a comparison. Then the third level of a death is by suicide. That is the worst thing. Like, when a family member commits a suicide, it is actually a punishment for all of the surviving members. Then the worse than the suicide is the abandonment. Abandonment is when someone leaves without giving any reason. And what Yashodhara faced is abandonment.
Mhm.
And so she has every reason to go through the grief for so long,
True.
and she cannot have an answer, because here is someone with whom she is living happily, and they're waiting for a baby for 13 years, and they got a baby. And on the day of when the baby is born, and husband abandons her,
Yes.
and probably there is nothing more severe in terms of the pain than that.
True.
Okay.
That's why Prajapati has that patience, and she keeps coming back to her and trying to bring her to, connect with the baby and current.
Yeah.
Situation. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for analyzing. Subhi. Thank you. Masters, anybody else? I know it's almost 9, but any last comments?
Oh, yeah.
Lakshmi.
The very Ramakrishna's pointer, it brings the real question actually, that the life what is sailing has to halt for some time to really look into ourselves, that what else is good in our life. We always give, like if I have to just take the example of princess, yeah, Yashodhara, she is just concentrated on Siddhartha. Probably her life also had other good parts. And that's how life happens to each one of us, that we are just concentrating on one part of our life, and then this happens to us to understand probably the other aspects of your life are also that good. And I understand the very depth what you spoke about, unexpected abandonment. Yeah, all these happen in whatever way, but it is something to bring your soul to understand what is exactly you need to concentrate. Or probably here the purpose of Yashodhara could have been that enlightenment is just not to leave and go, just to see that baby, very baby, what she is, has to raise singly. And all these beautiful souls, as Disha ma'am also expressed her as a Rama and now Buddha, they are here, okay? They are all Bodhisattva, matlab means one who are here to teach souls like us that how one can evolve through that trauma. Whether who is praised, who is not praised is not a question. Whether it is more like a thought, how one could have lived either side of life, whether being Buddha or whether being Yashodhara. Both were equally tough, according to me at least. And definitely one came with a lot of enlightenment. But this beautiful book, Masters, please stay till the end. This book beautifully brings how a person can stay in a grief and yet evolve. That is all about this book. The very question of Krishna sir, that how the grief could evolve. But this is what the beauty of Yashodhara's book is, that she shows the path. She is the path. She is probably the only path today I see in today's era, wherein how one can be. And the very reason why we had this book was the statement that each one of us are part of Yashodhara. Each one of us, whether it is no gender bias. Each one of us is in the path of Yashodhara with so many of struggles, but she has beautifully evolved with how the support she has evolved and how she has herself become support to others. Thank you, Vindhya ma'am. Thank you.
Swarna ma'am, I think I see you have a comment. Thank you, Lakshmi ma'am, for the wisdom. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vindhya ma'am. Beautiful, beautiful explanation, and loved it. Yes, I understand everybody masters questions, good contemplation. But yeah, because of Buddha, we are here. So don't forget that root. So anapanasati, right? So every master has a reason. Maybe we are looking one family, but he's looking whole world is a family. That's what Patriji sir says. Everybody are my kids. I'm thinking about all my kids, whole world kids, not one family. So that is the point. And also he gave enlightenment and he gave all the solution for us. That's why we are here, able to solve our problems. And also through Yashodhara, that is the main point here, right? So Yashodhara taught us how to go through those problems that Buddha had given, those challenges. So both, we have to learn from both sides. She had given the solution how to go through, and he had gave how you can solve. So both has a solution, masters. So yeah, just hold on to it. Let's not conclude anything. Just contemplate, and let's revolve the magic week by week. So it's a beautiful book. We are all evolving. So thank you so much, masters. Just continuously attend the session, and you enjoy it, and you resolve a lot of problems. We'll have all the solutions.
Thank you
And
so
we'll
much for reminding
yeah.
that. Yes, even Prajapati says, Siddhartha left, to find, he found that path of living and finding answers. And she justifies that. And she says, but you have to find your own path. I found my own path. So each one of us have to find our own answers, right? In our own way. And we can connect with any of them. But during this times, the way we are in relationships and everything, somehow she gives a different, the middle path. So it's a path that we might be able to understand. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody, we don't need to follow Buddhas. We don't need to follow Yashodharas. You create your own path. What
Yes.
suits for you, your circumstances, your situations. Okay. Pratyuj followed one thing. He showed one path. So he never says, don't follow me. You create your own reality, right? So you be a master. So that's what even Yashodhara showed. Buddha also showed, I am going my way to see my enlightenment. So everybody, like these situations happened, and he did not do wantedly. He had his past soul, all those plans, soul plans is there. So nothing happens just for that. Okay. So yeah, just these are the points, master. So whoever is missing, just keep reminding those. So, so that, they understand more the curiosity and all. So I see some less numbers here. So just please remind other folks, masters. So thank you, Vindhya ma'am.
Thank you, masters. Thank you, Swarna ma'am. Thank you all masters for this wonderful session and beautiful sharing today. Yeah, we'll meet again tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone patiently waiting. I know it went a little over time, but yes, we can share again. We'll have a day just for share,
Yeah,